Hey guys, how's it going? So at the beginning of 2019, I decided to do an Ironman. And, well, this is how it went. So this whole Ironman experience kind of just started with a general dissatisfaction with where my kind of health and fitness was. From like 2016 to 2018, I really wasn't in the best shape. And I really wanted to do something that would kind of break me out of like old thinking patterns and really just make me into a more disciplined person. So I looked for a challenge. And the best thing I could find was if I could complete a full iron distance triathlon, which is a 4-kilometer swim, a 180-kilometer bike ride, and a 42-kilometer run, that would pretty much validate me as a disciplined, fit person, and then I could go on and do other things. So that was kind of the motivation. So, goal, mission in mind, I set out to do one, and basically what happened was there were two. There was one that was about 11 weeks away, and the other was about a year and a half away. I didn't want to wait a year and a half to do this, so I decided that I would do one in 11 weeks. And I had massive doubts about this. Ironmans aren't easy, and doing it in 11 weeks, which is just shy of like 3 months, was like almost irresponsible. At this point, I knew that unless I completely changed how I basically lived my life, I wouldn't be able to do it. So I had to really kind of revamp my lifestyle to kind of fit in 10 to 15 hours of training a week, and that was kind of hard. So I'm not like a super busy guy. I don't have like a wife and kids and family and all that. I'm a pretty young dude, and all I do is work a 9 to 5. But even then, I had to completely rethink how I spent my time and my energy. And I think 3 changes that I made were really important in allowing me the bandwidth to do this Ironman. And the first one was no socializing on Fridays. I'd be in bed early on a Friday night because I realized that whenever I went out on a Friday night, 1 or 2 drinks in, you're out, you're partying. It's not good. So Friday nights, no socializing. In bed so I could do the long training rides necessary on the weekends. The second thing was no exercise but cardio. Prior to this, I was doing like weights and stuff like that. I cut all that out and said, all right, all the exercise time is now going to be dedicated to either swimming, biking, or running. And the third thing was kind of like reconfiguring my sleep schedule. And I think this was the most important thing. So I would try to get into bed by 8 or 9 p.m. and then wake up by 5 a.m. so that I could basically have from 5 a.m. to about 9 a.m. to do the allotted training for the week. And then on the weekends, I'd go for long bike rides. And that was kind of how I overhauled that section. So I kind of gave myself the time to train for that. Setting aside the time is one thing, but knowing what to do in that time was another. So the next thing I had to do was find a training plan. After a bit of digging, I found this training plan, and that was the one I pretty much used for the entirety of my journey. It was a little bit longer, I think it was 12 weeks. I only had, strictly speaking, 11, but I used it as a rough guide. And this was where I started to kind of run into trouble. Because the training plan was for such a short period of time, it assumed a prerequisite level of fitness. A prerequisite level of fitness that I didn't really have. So starting the Ironman, I probably could have run about like 5 kilometers maybe, and my cycling skill, my swimming had all kind of diminished. So I remember thinking that when the first week was out, I completely half-assed and botched the first week. I think there was like a 21-kilometer run. I barely did 10 with walking included. There was like a long swim set. I didn't finish the entire swim set, and there was like, I think something like a 80 or 60-kilometer bike ride, and I only did like, 50 kilometers. Wasn't off to a good start. And a lot of the training was really difficult. I'd be drenched in sweat, completely demoralized, and every single week I would always push myself as far as I could go, but unfortunately it was never quite as far as prescribed. I think the only kind of credit I can give myself within this entire period is that I never gave up entirely either, because I had kind of the time and the time kind of blocked out in order to do the training. I always showed up each day, but yeah, the first couple months, complete half-assed, under the load of what I needed to be. By about week 3 and 4, I started to acclimatize a little bit. I started to get stronger, and then from 4 to 5, that's when I really started to get into a groove. And from week 6 to 7, I kind of developed my own kind of style of training. So by now, I was really kind of getting back into the swing of things. I was doing like 3K swims in my office pool before work. I was doing 21-kilometer runs around the park office. Then I did like fast swim sets on the Wednesday, and then I did a shorter run on Thursdays, about 14 kilometers, and Friday was rest, and then Saturday was like a long bike ride, maybe like 100 Ks. So that was kind of like my level of fitness that I kind of plateaued at. But as the weeks kind of rolled by, I realized that that level of fitness might not be enough to complete the entire Ironman. So in the last couple of weeks, I decided that I had to really notch it up. And I decided to try and do each of the individual distances on their own, and just to see if I could do it or not. One kind of story that really kind of strikes out at me as like a very kind of symbolic moment of the whole event was when I tried to do a 200-kilometer bike ride by myself. And I knew that if I had just decided to do it and, you know, after a couple hours I'd get really bored and I'd eventually bail. So what I did was I transferred my friend about 400 Australian dollars, and I said, if I do not finish this 200-kilometer bike ride, if I do not send you a screenshot of my bike computer reading 200 kilometers on this computer, you get to keep the $400. And I think that was kind of like the extra motivation I needed to kind of give me that push. And ultimately, I did the 200 kilometers and kind of did a few other distances. I did a 32-kilometer run, 150-kilometer bike ride that day. And I think that was as close as I probably would have been to ready. So fast forward, prep time's over, race day. When you have only been training for 11 weeks, a lot of doubt kind of creeps into your mind of whether you can do it or not. And I kind of just had to leave that all aside when I got into the water. So the swim was really cool. The swim was, I went out a little too fast and almost kind of blew up before the race even started, but generally I eventually got to the shore. I finished in about an hour and 10 minutes, and then it was the bike ride. The bike ride was good for about the first 90 kilometers, but then after that, everything starts to shut down. The heat starts to exponentially get worse. You know, the power from your legs starts to like go down, and everything starts to get really, really annoying and really, really painful. And it's around this time that you're about 90 kilometers and 100 kilometers in, and you realize that you're barely halfway through the bike, you haven't even started the run, and now you're in this horrible position. Somehow, I think after about a long time, I eventually got off the bike and I felt as if it had taken like everything I had, and then you have to go and run a marathon. And at that point, it really does kind of seem impossible. It does kind of seem like, yep, that's not gonna happen. The body's not designed to do this. What am I doing? But you take a few steps, and then those steps eventually break out into a jog, and that jog turns into a run, and before you know it, you're kind of on the track to finishing this thing. I won't lie, the entire marathon did not go as smoothly as that. There were sections, long sections where I was like walking and lamenting the world and shivering in the cold and deciding to run again and not having the energy to run again and just... But I think the main thing was just not to stop. So you just kind of keep going, and then through the darkness, through like the cold winds, through the chills, you eventually finish. And sure enough, 14 hours, 56 minutes in, I finished. My first ever full Ironman. Yes! So, I have to be completely honest. As soon as I crossed the finish line, I didn't feel the catharsis, I didn't feel the validation, and I didn't feel like that, you know, fit or that disciplined person that I tried to want to become. And I know this is an incredibly cliche thing to say, but what it kind of teaches you this entire process is that discipline or fitness or whatever it is, it's more of a journey. It doesn't matter how far along the line you get, no matter where you go, it always just feels like another mile marker. So it wasn't as satisfying as I thought it would be. But what I really did kind of grab from all of that was kind of the new lifestyle, the going to bed early, the structured time for training, this idea that if you have a goal, you have to revolve your life around that, and that's the main way you can do it. So the goal itself isn't really important, but the setup for the trajectory is what I pretty much got out of the Ironman. So I'd encourage and I'd implore you guys right now, because we're in that period of like the end of 2019 and the beginning of 2020, and everyone's starting to make memes about the new year, to not think about a goal, because it's never quite as satisfying as you want it to be, but think about what you need to set up to kind of create the trajectory that you want. So, where do you guys want to set up your 2020? That was my story, that was my Ironman experience. Any comments, questions, criticisms, post them down below. I'll see you guys next time.